Marty
Hi,
Gallagher.
how you doing?
I'm doing good. We're having a little rain here in Sacramento.
Oh wow, yeah, we're having a cold spell here in San Diego. If you want to call it that. It got down to 56 degrees.
Oh my gosh. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
a little chiller. Really
Yeah,
cool.
break out the quilts.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, like I shared with you earlier, that there's a possibility that we might be having some folks dropping in on us for the first time. So I thought it might be fun to tell people, these are people who have a new thought background, and tell people what the accountability practice is. And I was also thinking about the ongoing conversation that you and I and several of our colleagues have been having about what do we name this? And so maybe out of that conversation, we can find a new name or reaffirm some of the old ones.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you
Sounds
had
good.
10 people in the room with you and they were here for the first time and they had some depth of maturity to themselves and their own life practices, but they've never attended an accountability session, how would you introduce it?
Well, that's what we've been struggling with for a long time, is how to say this succinctly. Let me say this. Accountability, according to how we have it in intentional living, accountability is simply stating your behaviors, current behaviors, without blame or judgment. And just hearing yourself say whatever the 12 steps we call character defect, whatever behavior that you're owning, and without blame or judgment. Let me, boy. So, let me say it again. Accountability is stating the behavior, naming the behavior without blame or judgment. And then what we'll do for the rest of the time we have together talking about this is I'll probably talk about how it came to me, how it developed in me, and then it finally to the final package of living intentionally.
So give an example. I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you. So the stating the behavior is I'm sitting, leaning forward, and I'm listening. Is that
Okay.
what you mean?
About explaining it, that's
Well, no,
no.
because I want somebody who's hearing this for the first time get exactly what you mean when you say I'm going to state the behavior, because this
Okay.
may not be a concept people are familiar with.
Right.
So maybe
So,
so I was trying to give an example.
oh, about people leaning forward.
Well, no, it's me. So my behavior,
Okay.
because I've been through this with you, so I know how to state my behavior. But
Right.
I think what's implied in that is not just the behavior in the sense of activity. So I'm leaning forward, I'm sitting down, whatever. But there's also an emotional and mental behavior going on that's accompanying my physical behavior. And so one of the things that my question is, when we say behavior, don't we mean something more comprehensive than simply stating I'm walking to the door, that's behavior. I'm yelling at you, that's behavior. There's more to it than that, isn't there?
Certainly is. So behavior, how I classify it, character defect is owning where you find yourself. And character defect, I use 5 words: arrogant, entitled, mean, controlling, needy. It could be an addictive behavior, it could be a resentment that you find yourself holding. Whatever pattern you've developed up until this time in your life is a behavior. I'm talking about the patterns of behavior. So owning those. Now, what we're going to do is try to unpack all of that into a way that they can get it in. And I don't know if that's possible in one session. It
Let's give
certainly,
it a shot.
yeah, let's give it a shot. So when people come to me, either private clients or I'm doing a workshop, they're coming to learn something new. So what the first question I ask them is, what do you want that you do not have? And then we name that, whether it could be a sense of peace, it could be a sense of confidence, it could be the capacity for compassion, to be compassionate. What do you want that you don't have? And then I talk about the logistics of the truth of that you're not embodying a particular thing that you say you want and what's stopping you. And the process of accountability is further into the opening statement. So we all come in with a frame of reference, and then this accountability process that you and I know is out of that frame of reference. So people listening are struggling to, number one, hear, and then make some context out of it that is personal. And that's what you and I are going to attempt to do in the next 45 minutes. So, so it starts with identifying what you do not have. And then I talk about the logistics that are all internal. Everything that bothers you, everything you enjoy is all internal. And then I lead them into that internal space through a sequence of ideas and concepts. Now, one of the things I'd like to do right now is ask anybody who's listening 3 questions, and then say something after that. The first 3 questions, or the 3 questions are, have you ever hurt somebody you loved, regretted it, and then did it again, usually in the same way? The second question is, have you ever been in an argument with somebody and in the middle of the argument found that you were on the wrong side of the argument and found yourself continuing with your argument anyway? Third question, have you ever been in a situation where you knew what you were about to do you would regret big time, and you even heard a little voice in your head saying, stop, don't do that, and you found that you couldn't or wouldn't stop whatever that behavior was? So generally, most people answer yes to all 3, some to 2. So what I want to tell everybody that just heard those 3 questions and your answer to them is that we're going to talk about the logistics of why you find yourself doing something you say you don't want to do over and over and over. And it's an internal mechanism that's built into our brain, brainstem, midbrain, and main brain. And it's called the reticular activating system. And it stores our experience in this mechanism and then accesses it in the current moment and evaluates for safety, for appropriateness. And it happens every time. And the behaviors that you do not like all the behaviors come from you. The behaviors that you do not like are coming from a past trauma, wounding, vow. Could be something you said, I'm never going to let anybody do blank, blank, blank to me. And that's stored in this subconscious pool of information. So when something happens in current moment, you go to that old pattern and don't know it. You're not aware of this because it's subconscious. And in real time, you look for an explanation of this pattern or this behavior that you say you don't like, you won't do, and you find yourself doing it over and over. So what we do in intentional living, and this is where the accountability process comes in, being able to state the end result of the past experience gives you a feeling moment, which accesses all the information in your memory and experience and opens you up to current reality. And that's the part we're missing. My experience of my life before my recovery was, if somebody did that, I always did this. My responses were, I was predictable. You knew that if this happened, I would do this behavior, even though I said I didn't want to do it. Okay. In my recovery, I've got it that the behavior I didn't want was from old patterns, old memories, could call it trauma, family dysfunction, simply our experience and how we perceived it creates a information base that feeds this midbrain and brainstem. And it decides whether whatever's happening here, our response is going to be, and we don't know it. So we're going to make that conscious.
So can I stop you for a second? Ask a couple questions.
Yeah, interrupt me anytime.
Yeah. So I'm doing it. Two things. Number one, that when you demonstrate the resonance of this in the brain, are you not suggesting that this actually has a physiological basis in reality? Human being electrochemical, what is it? Electromagnetic, biochemical, that these previous behavior patterns, traumas, whatever we're going to call them, have location in our bodies, specifically in our nervous system and in our brains.
Yes.
And so that part of our challenge is that most of what goes on in my body is outside of my normal consciousness. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about that split between the subconscious and conscious mind, so people get a sense of how vast the subconscious mind is, because that's where all the action is. Okay.
So the subconscious part of you, subconscious mind, can process 4 million bits of information per second. Your conscious mind, and I'm not sure about this number, but it says 4 bits of information per second. Even if it's 400 bits of information per second, it is way slower than your subconscious. So the subconscious stores memory, my experience. An example is driving a car. People that have driven a car for a lot of years simply get in the car, they don't think about it. And sometimes find themselves at the destination without any memory of in between what they did, red light, not red light. So that's an example of the subconscious. So you can see the power that the subconscious has to move you safely through whatever it is patterned to do. The problem with the subconscious is, number one, that it's subconscious, but it also holds our trauma. So it holds that necessity for a knee-jerk reaction. I don't know if necessity is the right word. It holds the impetus for the knee-jerk reaction, for the slamming of the door or raising your voice or moving away or withholding, whatever your reaction, your pattern is. And you are powerless if you don't know it. So let's pick one of those. Let's say you slam the door. So you can say that you're violent, or that you're abusive, or that something, name that you're stubborn, that you're rude, whatever your word for that behavior is, that comes from this constellation of memories, actually, of your entire life. So if you own that behavior, just name it. There's something that happens in your body, feeling, that validates that pattern of behavior. It says, oh, you're paying attention. So I don't have to knock you out, or I don't have to keep doing this pattern over and over to keep you safe. You're paying attention. You're validating the body sensation by stating the behavior. Now, this is counterintuitive because everybody's taught to be good, own your light, go to the light. And for me, one of the things I said, I'm abusive. And that was counterintuitive to what I was trying to be, what I was attempting to be was a nice guy. So if I owned that I'm abusive, that was difficult. So what I found is owning that label allows me to tap into that subconscious pool where my old memories are, and they don't have as much of a pull if I'm noticing them. This is again counterintuitive. I'm abusive. Let me. So I did that. I owned it. Actually, my statement was, I am a violent man. And I took a breath, and then the thought came to me, I'm gonna stop this. And I happened to be in a room full of men working on the same issues. So I started paying attention to what the guy was saying, because I knew that it was vital to my safety and the safety of the people around me. So I don't know, Marty, a good way to do is anybody that's listening can try the exercise. We can take them through the exercise.
Yeah, I think
Very
it's a
good.
good idea. Let's introduce the exercise.
Okay. The exercise is owning your character defects, taking a breath. So first of all,
Before you go,
yeah.
so I'm not sure everybody's going to be familiar with the words character defects. So maybe could you just explain a little bit about that?
Oh,
Because that's a term of art from 12 steps.
Yeah, it's whatever your partner has a pattern of calling you, like stubborn or impatient, or I don't know. We're gonna open a can of worms.
How about or how about things I don't like about myself?
Yeah, things you don't, your proclivities. Of course, when I had them, I didn't see them either. So let me say the 5 words, and any of these words that fit you, and not so much that makes sense to you, but that you feel it in your body. I'm going to say the 5 words slowly, and then you just feel what you feel when you hear me say these words. Okay, the first word is arrogant, entitled, mean, controlling, needy. So whichever word resonated with you, you may have thought hell no and felt something different. So just pick a word, and if these are the words we're looking for, these are what we call character defects in the 12 step. Like Marty said, self-critical words, things you call yourself. It could be, well, I remember calling myself stupid a lot, dumbass. We're looking for that awareness, that behavior that you do. And then once I'm going to give you like 5 seconds to get those, and then we'll start the process. So find your word, and what I'm going to ask you to do is simply say the word I am, and then the word, and then take a breath. And then once you take a breath, I'm going to ask everybody the same question. I'm going to ask you a question at the end of it. And then think about, or just feel, something will come to you that's different than what you've done before. That's my, it's a promise, but we got the train going. Oh my goodness. Okay, so pick your word: arrogant, entitled, mean, controlling, needy. And then say the words I am. For me, it would be controlling and needy. I am controlling and needy. Take a breath. There's an emotion that happens when you say the truth according to how you see it, not anybody else. And you get attached to sources of information, which is your emotional body. So say the word again. I am controlling, needy, arrogant, whatever the word is for you. And then something will come to you about what you want that's different than that word or that energy. For me, it is my intent to be accepting, or it is my intent to be kind that came up. I don't remember the specific thing that came up. And I noticed it. I noticed me focusing on kindness or acceptance. And then I said, it is my intent to be accepting. It is my intent to be kind. And whatever comes up for you that you want that is different, you get to create the intent. What's happening in your body is that you're validating yourself. I know this is counterintuitive, just if you just be simply willing to listen and feel. It's a validation of that wounded part of you, or that hurt part of you, or that part of you that made a decision, I'll never let anybody. And what that gives you is options in the moment that are different. And when you're done, just take a nice deep breath. And I'd like to hear on the comments if anybody attempted that, what happened or what you might need that we do different. I'm not sure. Any comments, I'd be open to hearing.
Can I share my experience?
Yes.
So I remember the first time you introduced these 5 behaviors or thought patterns, emotional patterns, whatever. And we were doing it, just so people know, we were doing it in the context of a men's group. So it was just men in the room. And I remember having a similar kind of reaction to what you suggested, John, which is I don't see that I have many of these going on.
Mm-hmm.
So the more that we worked on this stuff, the more I actually began to see I'm pretty darn arrogant. And the one I really didn't want to own was I'm mean.
Yeah.
And so because I had an image of myself, and the image did not conform to my actual experience. And that's where I was finding myself at cross purposes. So in my conscious mind, I was nice and straightforward and honest, and but my behavior toward people, especially the people I loved, was often very mean and arrogant, rash, dismissive of what the other person was trying to say. And so what you taught was to be willing to own those experiences. I'm arrogant, I'm mean, without blaming myself or judging myself. This is just what's so.
Yes.
That the reality is just what it is. And when I'm willing to be with the reality as it is, now I have that vibrational, emotional, energetic response, because I can't underscore any more powerfully than you did that this is all about moving towards self-acceptance.
Yes.
And that my experience as a little kid in my family was that I wasn't accepted, that my behavior was constantly being changed. If I said I was feeling bad, I might be told I'm not. No, you're not. Or if I was sick, no, you're just trying to get out of school, blah, blah. Yeah. Any number of, there's a whole list of the kinds of things that we say to our children that are unfairly seeking to alter their behavior or their reality.
Yes.
And so once I could own that underneath all of this happy belief about myself, this charming, wonderful man stuff, was this other thing, then I could actually, like you said, I I remember the first time I really got a hold of a truth about myself that I'd been avoiding, and just my whole body relaxed because it was acceptance. I finally said, you know what? It's okay. This is what it is.
Yeah.
And maybe for the very first time in my life, I heard somebody that I cared about say, "You're okay just the way you are." In effect.
Yes. Yeah.
And so for me, the power of this work has always been finding deeper and deeper and deeper levels of self-acceptance by finding deeper and deeper levels of things that I believe about myself that I can't admit,
Yes.
can't own,
Mm-hmm.
because of the blame and judgment tendency, which is it's a catch-22 for many of us. Because
Yes.
I remember sitting there watching myself blame myself and go, I can't do this because I'm blaming myself.
Right.
And then I got to learn to say it's okay. No blame, no judgment about blaming and judgment even.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's my experience with being willing to take a look at these 5 character defects, or whatever we want to call them, that when I was engaging in them resulted in me pushing you or other people away from me rather than bringing you closer.
Right. Yeah. And I think it was William Glasser, or anyway, who said the greatest human need is the need to be needed, to belong. And that's what we're all looking for. And we do it in various ways. It's the thing from Center for Spiritual Living. There's either call for love or an expression for love, no exceptions. And once I recognize the thing I don't want to admit that I don't want anybody to know, and if they did know, being raised a Catholic, I was hell-bound, and if the people did find out about it, they would leave me. That I would be all alone. So I hid my fears, which created my fears. And it goes on and on. Then I try harder to not hide my fears, or to hide my fears. Actually, I tried harder to hide them, and I became more rigid and untouchable, and it's a downward spiral. This process has given me my life back. The 12 steps assisted me to quit drinking long enough to finally get this. It's like, oh my God, it not only saved my life, but it enriched my children's life and my grandson's life. Me doing my work, me finding relief from the self-criticism and self-blame, and I was on a level of self-hate, opened me up to a real relationship with my children. And by real, I mean sometimes I don't like it, but that's the way it is. And commanding respect from people I meet. Yeah, it's incredible. And just having this one talk, hopefully, is a teaser, lean forward on somebody's part, and they either get a hold of you and go to the Rusty Nail Club, or get a hold of me and figure something out, start talking. So yeah, I'm glad you brought this up.
So let me talk about this word accountability.
Yeah.
When I first heard the word accountability, I wanted to run away, because what I heard, and I suspect many of us, when we hear this word, what I hear is somebody holding me accountable, somebody outside of myself making me bad because I did something wrong.
Yeah, that's what it says in the dictionary, by the way.
Right.
Holding somebody liable or punishable. It's
right.
like, I remember the first time I said it in the jail with the guys that had been accountable or suffering the consequences for their accountability, and they all just in one breath said, "No, hell no! Are you kidding me? We already did that," and that's where I got no blame, no judgment.
Right.
Stating the data, no blame, no judgment. Just and it was one of those moments.
So oftentimes when we introduce the accountability, we write the word on a whiteboard, and then we take a slash and we put a slash between the word account and ability, so that we make the point that this is about being able to simply state, account for, name the truth about what's going on inside of me, particularly in those moments of unhappy experience, hurt, anger, violence, all those things that in our conscious minds we say we don't want, and in our subconscious minds we do, because that's what's being produced.
Yes.
So accountability in our world means just that ability. It's an ability to count, tell the truth, not to make consequences from it. In fact, it's the opposite. Right. I want to be able to account for what's true so that I can open up a possibility of something else.
Yes. Well put. Well put, Marty. Yes. I appreciate you. I forgot what I was going to say now.
We're talking about the word accountability.
Yeah. And I'm thinking I had to do that in my own mind, redefine the word, exactly what you just said. That was, so when I say accountability, it's like it's something attractive to me.
Right. Part of the reason I wanted to raise that is because you've said this word a couple of times in your share, which is counterintuitive. And so what I'm here to tell anybody listening to this for the first time is that most of this will seem counterintuitive, will likely seem counterintuitive, because we live in a culture that does not know how, through our institutions, our educational system, even our religious systems, even our psychotherapeutic systems, does not know how to just be willing to speak difficult truths. So if I don't know how to speak difficult truths, that's because I'm trying to avoid something that I fear to be the consequence of speaking that truth. And in my experience in this work, John, it turns out what I'm fearing is actually a feeling, not necessarily a response from somebody else, although oftentimes it's disguised as that. But what I'm fearing is that feeling of abandonment, that feeling of I'm unlovable, that feeling of deep shame that has lived inside of me for a long, long time and was driving all kinds of behaviors that I was completely unaware of. And so this is counterintuitive, because we live in a world that's willing to put up with all kinds of pain to avoid a deeper pain.
And they don't know
it. To do that.
Yeah, and you didn't know it. It's not like you knew this as you're doing it. Yeah. And you don't have the information about how to access this healing place.
Exactly.
Yeah. So accountability, no blame, no judgment, simply stating the truth about the pattern that I've developed based on my experience. It's in alignment with my experience. It may not be in alignment with my rational head, like, why did I do that? And it's in alignment with the information that we received as children. You were talking about that abandonment feeling. As a child, that was a death sentence. As an infant toddler, abandonment was a death sentence. So when parents innocently left a room, the abandonment came up in an emotional hit and stayed in your body, so that the next time this happens, and the next time is now you're 50 years old, your wife just walked out the door and you go bananas and you don't know why. And this addresses that trauma brings it into light, brings it into the open, brings it into awareness. And then you can decide, not a good idea. I don't want to do that anymore. It is my intent to be self-reliant. It is my intent to be self-actualized. It is my intent to love myself. It is my intent to know that I'm safe whether she's here or he's here or not.
So this raises a question, I think, that's worth exploring a little bit more. Projection and shadow and triggering. Could you speak to those a little bit? I mean, they're kind of implied in what we've been talking about, but we could bring a little more shape to them by naming them.
Projection is usually defined as, in my mind, as a character in the realm of character defects. When you look at somebody and say they're an asshole, or they're arrogant, or they're inconsiderate, that's a projection. It may or may not of what's internal inside me. Okay, so it may or may not be true about them. Don't get me wrong. It may be true about them, and it's still coming from me. So that's my experience, my perception of what's happening. Until I ask that person, I don't know what's happening over there. But what I see, what I perceive, is my projection. This not only works with asshole. I'm trying to think of a nice word. It also
mean entitled.
Yeah.
That person thinks he's entitled.
Yeah. Okay. And it also works when you look at somebody and say, wow, they're wise. That's also in you. This is not only about bad stuff, although that's where we start. We start with the things that are hidden from us, or in that self-critical litany that we have for ourselves, and simply own them without blame or judgment.
I tell you, that's been the hardest part of the work for me. And I'll let people know who are listening to this that most of us do this work in a group setting. Like I mentioned, I started off with in a men's group that John was facilitating for us. And there's something invisibly healing about being in a group setting where every person in the group has made a commitment to healing in whatever way that person understands healing. Nobody has to have the exact appreciation of what that means. And so sitting in a group, here's why it's tough. I'm sitting in a group of men, and I know most of these men. The original group was people that went to church with us together. And now I'm going to own I'm arrogant. I'm going to own I'm violent. I'm going to own these things that somehow I've labeled as shameful. So it took a long time for me to really appreciate that when I would be triggered by behavior I saw in someone else, and by triggered I mean just have some kind of emotional hit, usually anger or resentment, one of those words, one of those experiences, to be willing to say without blame or judgment, that's me. That if I'm judging this other person to be entitled, I'm entitled.
Right.
And
you have the. Yeah. Go ahead.
I remember sitting in a group setting and watching you say that to another man who was indicting someone else, and you said, so what's the worst thing you can say about this person? And it's that person's a moral coward, let's say. Yeah. So you'd say, so are you willing to consider the possibility that you're a moral coward? And the looks on people's faces and when you ask those questions are priceless, because 9 times out of 10, my experience is our minds might be saying no, but our bodies are saying yes.
Yeah, exactly. And your body is smarter than you are. Right. Your body knows the truth. When you get to the truth, your body will tell you exactly, yeah, that's it. Whether it's reasonable or unreasonable, it doesn't matter. You believe it or you don't believe it. Your body will go, ooh, yep, ooh, that, oh my God, I can feel that. What's that? Oh, that's the truth. Yeah. And in the feeling, That's the goal, is to get into the body. In that ownership, in that feeling is where the healing takes place. There's a line in the 12-step program, you cannot heal it till you feel it. So this process, accountability, no blame, no judgment, my truth, character defect, breath, take a breath, your body knows how to do the emotion, is access to that thing that is hidden from you.
So not long ago, I don't know whether you would suggest this or somebody, I got a hold of this book called Feeling is the Secret, Neville Goddard. So
Yeah, I can see it real good. Yeah.
maybe you could help a person who's listening to this for the first time, who may think that's a counterintuitive statement, talk a little bit more about why the emotion and the feeling is the secret here. What is the secret about that?
Oh my God. We'll start out small here.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, we are human beings, planet Earth. We're biochemical, electromagnetic beings, motivated and operated through emotional impulse. It's our guidance system for fulfillment and safety that we've denied. Men have denied, we've been taught to deny it. Women are told they can have feelings, but it's been demeaned and diminished. And the only reason they have feelings is because they are women, which is demeaning and considered weak. So that access to our guidance system given to us as human beings, biochemical, electromagnetic being, has been taken away from us or distorted into that we're fighting it or denying it instead of embracing and folding into it. How was that?
Well, I think that's a nice place to start. So the truth is, I'm always feeling something. The truth is that I'm
Yes.
always in an emotional state. And number two, that emotional state is dynamic. And it's never the same from moment to moment, or it's rarely the same for a long period of time. Something always changes. And so I'm oriented to want the good feelings and to get rid of the bad feelings. And that
Right.
starts in childhood. And so if I have
Yes.
felt something in that world that we talked about a moment ago, abandonment, I don't want that feeling.
Right.
I've shared with you before, I don't know if I've done it on the podcast, but I've shared with you before that through therapy and other practices, I've gotten in touch with that original hurt, and I don't like it. I don't like it. It really hurts.
Yes.
And I can understand why I would spend a lifetime not wanting to feel that I would feel other things equally painful to avoid feeling that one. But the reverse is also true, that when I'm in that feeling, I'm not dying from it. I'm surviving it just fine, thank you. I'm living to tell the tale. And I'm also accessing its healing. That the reason the feeling is the secret is because the negative feeling is the doorway to the positive feeling.
Yes.
That as long as once I feel shame, I feel hurt, I feel dread, terror of being abandoned, I know, having gone through it, that it's not death dealing, which is as an infant, that's what it feels like. Like you said earlier, it feels like I'm going to die, and a living organism cannot choose to die. A living organism must defend itself. It must survive.
Yeah.
And so for me, the power of this work has been, first of all, to learn to feel. And I've sat in groups for a long time now, John, where even the women say, I set an intention to feel all their feelings, because it's endemic in our culture. And I don't want to make that bad. It's just what it is. And the opportunity to learn how to feel is the key to salvation, because in the feeling, I can now set something new for myself. I can move from a subconscious resistance to feeling to a conscious embrace of feeling. And it's all the difference in the world.
All the difference in the world. And what I want to say about feeling and emotion, emotions are sources of information that we've labeled as happy, hurt, sad, excited, passionate, angry, afraid. They're simply information sources to for us to be safe in the world. It's also our guidance system, happy, sad, to fulfillment. Emotions are information sources. Body sensation feelings are confirmation that I just received some information, which is vital to my safety and to my next decision. And with that information, it's called being present in the moment, lucid, I want to even say enlightened. They enlightened people simply know where they're at when they're there. It's really cool. So, yeah.
What's that famous line the Buddha supposedly said when somebody asked him, "Who are you?" He said, "I'm awake."
Yeah. I'm simply aware.
There's a interesting feedback loop. I'm aware, and I state that which I'm aware of. And when I state that as the truth, then that sets off a virtuous cycle within my body of acceptance and peace. And oftentimes you hear people talk about this as the peace that passes understanding.
Yes.
Because oftentimes, now we're back into counterintuitive land, oftentimes there doesn't seem to be a rational explanation for why a shift has occurred. And having gone through this process, I've come to understand I don't really need to know why.
Yeah.
It's not as important as the actual commitment to something different and finding a process that actually works.
And believe me, this works. This works. It's like I said, given me a life I never knew was possible.
Yeah, me too.
So
I
want to offer you and I talk about this almost every podcast. So this information is in whatever podcast you want to look at or browse. And it's basic information. It's counterintuitive. That's why the repetition of it's inside you is like, how do I get to it? Oh, accountability. It puts you right in your body, right in where you're at to heal and move forward.
You know, it's kind of cool that most of the elements of this practice are not new, but it seems to me that you have uniquely pulled different strings together to create this this holistic approach, holistic body, mind, soul. Body, emotion, mind, thoughts, soul, enlightenment. And that all of these things are integrated. So impacting one impacts all. So that if I have an emotional healing, I'm going to also have a intellectual or mental healing, and I'm going to have a spiritual healing.
Yeah. Can I tell a story about you and I that's kind of personal? It was in your first workshop with me with the council, elders council. And it was about, I think it was second day, maybe it was late the first day. And usually when I present, people are confused and we do exercises, or like you said, somebody would give me a projection and I bring it back to them. And you raised your hand and you said, what you're giving us that, like, for enlightenment? and I don't know if you remember the big smile that came on my face, because that's exactly what it was. And I was couching it under accountability, be nice, learn how to talk to each other, that kind of stuff, and it was just priceless.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, that's what it is. It's to simply awareness. You can call it enlightenment, awareness of where I'm at when I'm there.
One thing that I've talked about in my church a little bit along these lines is that we're born in a world of conditions, and we're looking for unconditional love. And I can't find unconditional love through conditions. I have to let go of the conditions and take the risk. It's about vulnerability. It's about being open. Take the risk that unconditionality actually enfolds all the conditions all the time.
Yeah.
That when I let go of a belief in a condition, and that these character defects are actually partly a belief in a condition about myself. When I can let go and I can engage my body in this emotional regeneration based on telling the truth is unconditional. That's
Yes.
why our bodies relax, because it's for the first time, perhaps, we're feeling unconditionality. We're feeling it.
From ourselves.
Correct.
It's the only place we can get it.
Correct.
Because we are the center source through me, as me. God
Right.
acts through me, as me.
Exactly.
Wow.
And so what I notice whenever I have those moments of just naked truth, I notice a sensation, and it's a sensation that then becomes a thought, but it starts as a sensation of spaciousness, of unconditionality, of eternal possibility. It's really hard to put into words if you haven't experienced this. It's like you have to experience it.
Yes.
It's like I can show you a picture of the Grand Canyon till the cows come home, but it ain't nothing like being there.
No. No.
You get a sense of it, perhaps, but so the same thing with this accountability practice. As John mentioned earlier, we run a group here out of Sacramento, but we're doing it on Zoom. We call it the Rusty Nail Club in honor of that rusty nail some of us like to sit on until the pain of not getting up becomes greater than the pain of getting off of it. Because we're habitual, we human beings. Like I said earlier, I went through years, decades of feeling certain kinds of pain to avoid feeling other pain.
Yeah.
So ways to participate in that are at the very end of this podcast. You can get in touch with me, and I'll be happy to plug you in. Or if you'd like to talk to John more and get more direct one-on-one conversation with John, he's happy to speak with you, and his contact information is also at the end of the podcast. So I know you're going to be surprised to know that an hour has gone by already. Any last minute wrap up words that you'd like to tell the newcomer?
I appreciate you, Marty. I really appreciate you. And what happens between us when we get together, and who you are.
Thanks, John.
How about that?
Back at you.
You're welcome. Okay.
So quick lesson on projection. So in the old days, if John were to say that to me, I would do everything to deflect that. Because I would say, no, John, you're the sage, you're the saint, you're the beautiful man. And as you said, that can be true. But it also would have been it would have been a projection of my own beauty, et cetera, et cetera. So the beauty of understanding projection and understanding emotional truth is that there's a world of joy, and there's a world of ownership of the creative process available to us when we break through these compulsive, hidden, subconscious behavior patterns that have kept us entombed in some low-level emotional pain for decades. We don't have to have it.
Well put, Marty. Very good. Yeah.
Well, maybe we can explore this more next week. What do you say?
Yeah. 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 We'll do it again and again and again.
Right. So we invite everybody to stay tuned. Like I said, if you're interested in getting in touch with us, the information follows. Also, like John said, if there's anything you'd like to share, you can put it in the comments of the video, the YouTube video, or you can send us via the email listed at the end. Thoughts or things you'd like us to explore or explain more, please feel free to be in touch. And
Yeah. Very good.
You have a great weekend.
You too, Marty.
Thank you.